Unbroken, Chapter 1, pages 7 through 11. Louis was 20 months younger than his brother, who was everything he was not. Peter Zamperini was handsome, popular, impeccably groomed, polite to elders, and avuncular to juniors. Silky smooth with the girls, and blessed with such sound judgment that even when he was a child, his parents consulted him on difficult decisions. He ushered his mother into her seat at dinner, turned in at 7, and tucked his alarm clock under his pillow as to not to wake Louis, with whom he had shared a bedroom. He rose at 2:30 to run a 3-hour paper route and deposited all his earnings in the bank, which would swallow every penny when the depression hit. He had a lovely singing voice and a gallant habit of carrying pins in his pant cuffs in case his dance partner's dress strap failed. He once saved a girl from drowning. Pete radiated a gentle but impressive authority that led everyone he met, even adults, to be swayed by his opinion. Even Louis, who made a religion out of heeding no one, did as Pete said. Louis idolized Pete, who watched over him and their younger sisters, Sylvia and Virginia, with paternal protectiveness. But Louis was eclipsed, and he never heard the end of it. Sylvia would recall her mother tearfully telling Louis how she wished he would be more like Pete. What made it more galling was that Pete's reputation was part myth. Though Pete earned grades little better than Louis's failing ones, his principal assumed that he was a straight-A student. On the night of the Torrance church bell miracle, a well-directed flashlight would have revealed Pete's legs dangling from the tree alongside Louis's. And Louis wasn't always the only Zamperini boy who could be seen sprinting down the alley with food that had lately belonged to the neighbors. But it never occurred to anyone to suspect Pete of anything. Pete never got caught, said Sylvia. Louis always got caught. Nothing about Louis fit with other kids. He was a puny boy, and in his first years in Torrance, his lungs were still compromised enough from the pneumonia that in picnic foot races, every girl in town could dust him. His features, which would later settle into pleasant collaboration, were growing at different rates, giving him a curious face that seemed designed by committee. His ears leaned sidelong off his head like holstered pistols, and above them waved a calamity of black hair that mortified him. He attacked it with his Aunt Margie's hot iron, hobbled it in a silk stocking every night, and slathered it with so much olive oil that flies trailed him to school. It did no good. And there was his ethnicity. In Torrance, in the early 1920s, Italians were held in such disdain that when the Zamperinis arrived, the neighbors petitioned city council to keep them out. Louis, who knew only a smattering of English until he was in grade school, couldn't hide his pedigree. He survived kindergarten by keeping mum, but in first grade, when he blurted out, "Brute bastardi!" at another kid, his teachers caught on. They compounded his misery by holding him back a grade. He was a marked boy. Bullies, drawn by his oddity and hoping to goad him into uttering Italian curses, pelted him with rocks, taunted him, punched him, and kicked him. He tried buying their mercy with his lunch, but they pummeled him anyways, leaving him bloody. He could have ended the beatings by running away or succumbing to tears, but he refused to do either. You could beat him to death, said Sylvia, and he wouldn't say ouch or cry. He just put his hands in front of his face and took it. As Louis neared his teens, he took a hard turn. Aloof and bristling, he lurked around the edges of Torrance, his only friendships forged loosely with rough boys who followed his lead. He became so germophobic that he wouldn't tolerate anyone coming near his food. Though he could be a sweet boy, he was often short-tempered and obstruse. He feigned toughness, but he was secretly tormented. Kids passing into parties would see him lingering outside, unable to work the courage up to walk in. Frustrated at his inability to defend himself, he made a study of it. His father taught him how to work a punching bag and made him a barbell from 2 lead-filled coffee cans welded to a pipe. The next time a bully came at Louis, he ducked left and swung his right fist straight into the boy's mouth. The bully shrieked, his tooth broken, and fled. The feeling of lightness that Louis experienced on his walk home was one he would never forget. Over time, Louis's temper grew wilder, his fuse shorter, his skills sharper. He socked a girl. He punched a teacher. He pelted a policeman with rotten tomatoes. Kids who crossed him wound up with fat lips, and bullies learned to give him a wide berth. He once came upon Pete in their front yard in a standoff with another boy. Both boys had their fists in the front of their chins, each waiting for the other to swing. Louis can't stand it, remember Pete. He's standing there. Hit him, Pete, hit him! I'm waiting there, and all of a sudden Louis turns around and smacks this guy right in the gut. And then he runs. Anthony Zamperini was at his wit's end. The police had seemed to be on the front porch, trying to talk sense into Louis. There were neighbors to be apologized to, and damages to be compensated for with money that Anthony couldn't spare. Adoring his son, but exasperated by his behavior, Anthony delivered frequent, forceful spankings. Once, after he caught Louis wiggling through the window in the middle of the night, he delivered a kick to the rear so forceful that it lifted Louis off the floor. Louis absorbed the punishment in tearless silence, then committed the same crimes again, just to show that he could. Louis's mother, Louise, took a different tact. Louis was a copy of herself, right down to the vivid blue eyes. When pushed, she shoved. Sold a bad cut of meat, she'd march down to the butcher, frying pan in hand. Loving mischief, she spread icing over a cardboard box and presented it as a birthday cake to a neighbor, who promptly got the knife stuck. When Pete told her he'd drink castor oil if she gave him a box of candy, she agreed, watched him drink it, and then handed him an empty candy box. You only asked for the box, honey, she said with a smile. That's all I got. And she understood Louis's resistiveness. One Halloween, she dressed as a boy and raced around town trick-or-treating with Louis and Pete. A gang of kids, thinking she was one of the local toughs, tackled her and tried to steal her pants. Little Louise Zamperini, mother of 4, was deep in the melee when the cops picked her up for brawling. Knowing that punishing Louis would only provoke his defiance, Louise took a serendipitous route toward reforming him. In search of an informant, she worked over Louis' schoolmates with homemade pie and turned up a soft boy named Hugh, whose sweet tooth was Louis' undoing. Louise suddenly knew everything Louis was up to, and her children wondered if she had developed psychic powers. Sure that Sylvia was snitching, Louis refused to sit at the supper table with her, eating his meals in spiteful solitude off the open oven door. He once became so enraged with her that he chased her around the block. Outrunning Louis for the only time in her life, Sylvia cut down the alley and dove into her father's work shed. Louis flushed her out by feeding his 3-foot-long pet snake into the crawl space. Then she locked herself in the family car and didn't come out for an entire afternoon. It was a matter of life and death, she said some 75 years later. For all her efforts, Louise couldn't change Louis. He ran away and wandered around San Diego for days, sleeping under a highway overpass. He tried to ride a steer in the pasture, got tossed onto the ragged edge of a fallen tree, and limped home with his gashed knee bound in a handkerchief. 27 stitches didn't tame him. He hit one kid so hard that he broke his nose. He upended another boy and stuffed paper towels into his mouth. Parents forbade their kids from going near him. A farmer, furious over Louis' robberies, loaded his shotgun with rock salt and blasted him in the tail. Louis beat one kid so badly, leaving him unconscious in a ditch, that he was afraid that he had killed him. When Louise saw the blood on Louis' fist, she burst into tears.